Hello everyone, Kochi here once more, and I welcome you to the 6th Vale level art time-lapse. It's been a few weeks, but I promise you there's quite a lot of stuff coming soon. Besides this video which you're watching just now, there's two other time-lapses which are all quite done. I just need to do the voiceovers like I'm doing for this one just now. So expect things soon. Over these weeks I've been doing a lot of stuff in the map and it's taking a really good shape. I'm starting to actually like things. But well, there's a few things to talk about on this video, so let's get into it. So firstly, let's talk about what I'm doing in the moment. I'm basically continuing to detail the building I started on the previous time-lapse, and like I mentioned on the previous video, I did the upper floor windows so they had actual detailed interiors. And the same thing is applying here to the ground floor. I'm gonna do these window frames and the facade, but I'm actually having the rooms behind them be open, and I'll end up detailing them. But with this approach, there comes a few things to consider, right? Well, the most obvious one would probably be the performance cost. By having these open interiors, you have a lot of more objects that you have to render, and uh, they'll also be behind the glass. So depending on maybe the engine, I don't know exactly how Source 2 Pro calculates those, but usually if you have a translucent materials stacked on top of each other, it adds to the rendering complexity. So this is one thing to consider, right? Performance. And also the proper work you'll have to do in these rooms. So if you just put a opaque glass or a parallax a faked window, faked interior, you have way less work, right? Uh, so that's another thing to consider. But one other thing which first came to my attention during the map climb I once did. I don't know if you've seen that map. It was back in Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It was a map that had a lot of indoors, and it has had a modern vibe. So you had a lot of windows, just like this one you have here, indoors with windows, and then there were a lot of rooms with stuff behind it. I've said on previous videos that I always and still love doing out of bounds. The scenery that isn't exactly unplayable space, because I feel it makes the map way more lived in. But in that case, I did so many of those rooms, and there were many problems that came with it. I remember doing the first like a private playtest on that climb map once the art was kind of done, and one of the playtesters, it was Putty, the guy responsible for the level design on the Agency and the Breach maps. You probably heard of Agency. Both were featured in Counter-Strike Global Offensive and also CS2. Well, after playtesting that map, he made a Nimgur slideshow basically with a lot of angles, a lot of pictures with the term affordance. And affordance was a term I never heard about, but it applies exactly to this kind of situation you have here that happened on the climb and also am I doing right now on the interior here, is that you have a window and then you have something behind the window, but then what does affordance really mean? And on this context is basically what the environment offers to the individual, the player. You could say that it's what the player can perceive from looking at his surroundings. So the deal with affordance on what we faced on Climb is that we had all these interiors that you couldn't access, but they were like behind the glass. And most of these interiors, since I spent so much time working on them, I was like, oh, I'm gonna lit them up. I'm gonna make so they are visible, right? But well, that's where the mistake comes. By me wanting the player to see the hard work I've put in these out of bounds, I left these rooms lit and they didn't look any different than the playable space. And that was very bad for gameplay. That's where the affordance term came in. When you first got into the level, it wasn't really clear what was accessible, if a player could be behind here or not. It was very unclear. That basically kind of the readability of the level was very bad because of it. You could say it's a term similar to affordance. So that teach me a good lesson. And in the end, by having all the rooms By dimming the glass, making the glass less translucent, like more opaque, also making the rooms not lit, I was able to remove a lot of the clutter in these rooms. It ended up being better for everything, for everyone, because visibility was better, readability of the map was better, performance was also better. So that's one of the main things that also comes with this. So there's the performance part, the additional work you'll have to do, and then the readability thing that it can make things worse. So this is something I had to consider here, and in the end, it wasn't much of an issue. I've learned that if the interiors are usually not lit, it makes things a lot easier. If you do make these fake interiors or well these inaccessible interiors, if they're lit up, that's when it gets makes things more difficult for readability. So I will be leaving this unlit since the shops would be closed theoretically. And the other thing that comes with it is that this place specifically on the map is on the T spawn. It doesn't have actually much going on a regular round. Like the players don't go much here. They start at this place, but the objective is on the opposite side of the map. So there are some fights that happen with these windows on the background, but they are not often. So it's probably not an issue for now. And if it is, I can easily just put some overlays on top of the windows, like some lines, brand of the this place, which, well, as you can see, maybe now it's a barber shop. But I guess you can sum it up that you have to consider these things before doing these interiors, and sometimes you can't really know everything just from the beginning. You can plan some of it, think about it, but sometimes what you do end up being different, the end result being different than what you initially planned. So I'll be doing this on the map, and then that's why you playtest, why that you test with people and so on once the map is actually more towards done, because then you can see these flaws which maybe your eye and the eye of your teammates or whoever you're working with didn't initially see, but then other eyes can see these problems, and then you have the chance to fix them. Uh, Level art environment art is a very incremental process. Level design as well. Like uh, you can't really get all things right from the beginning, so you'll do things, and of course, ideally, as I've been talking about on the series, you've been seeing that planning is often very good, but you can't plan everything. Some things just aren't in your control. Some things end up being different, so it's fine to change things afterwards. But that's the matter when it comes to affordance, this term. I don't know if you've heard of it before. I didn't, being I'm not a native English speaker. But yeah, this matter also reminds me that uh, from the thing that I learned from Climb is that environment art often enough isn't about being very notable, making that thing that is, oh, this looks so good. Like initially, the first thing that catches your eye in the level, because uh, if that's what you're always looking for, if you're always trying to make everything take your attention, everything has to look grandiose and so on. If you think about it, then you will not have any contrast. If everything brings attention, then nothing really brings attention. If you get what I'm saying. So a lot of environment art is just doing the mundane things, just doing the the flat wall that has some, I guess, wear on it that will not bring attention, but that's what will make so the other things in your level that you did put some more effort in, let's say a hero prop, a specific composition of buildings that catches your eye, that's what will make them pop out more. So it's a balance, right? Uh, just like in graphic design, you have these concepts of contrast. It's the same for here. It's all the matter composition, which I also talked about before in other videos. So I guess from this and also the previous videos, you see that composition really is important. Uh, it took me a bit to learn this, but one example also I can mention is the matter of the flat wall, which, well, I did say just a bit back, is that back then I saw that I had to fill everything with detail. To make art, to make things beautiful, I had to put detail everywhere. Every wall had to have a window, every wall had to have everything. But if you look in real life, often enough you have walls that are just plain wall, or just a painted wall that has nothing in it, and then is where the texture quality really makes things pop. When you have a flat wall, the only thing you have to see really is the texture. So that's where asset quality does make some difference. And the deal is, it is fine to have empty walls. You can't have detail everywhere. It's again this matter of composition, this matter of balance that makes the whole thing come together. So this is something that just comes with practice again. Like you can see the concepts, the theory, but this is something you just work on over time. By doing projects, you see, this looks good, this looks iffy, this, yeah, basically practice. So it's something that you build over years of experience. So to close this topic, I'll say that often enough, art is about making something that will not be noticed. But then here's the catch. When this part of the art, these things that shouldn't be noticed, are executed badly, or if they are not done at all, like it's everything that tries to catch your attention, then is that people will see it's wrong. If it's done right, it's not going to be noticed. So a lot of art is just that, doing something that is not going to be noticed, but it leaves room for the other things to pop out. Moving on from that, I'm now going to talk about a more general topic regarding environmental art. I've already spoken before that it's something that is very daunting, is to look at all the things you gotta do for an environment, especially at the beginning of the project. You have, if we're gonna make a list of all the things you gotta do, you have thousands of lines of things you gotta do. It's just how environments are, and they have so many factors to them. So uh, at the beginning, once you do something, it's kind of daunting because, as I said, because there's not much else going along with it. You just, well, let's say you make a house. The house is empty, and let's say there's no, you didn't blend the textures on it. You just have the house. You just have the structure. It will miss the wires, the clutter, the wear. Uh, it still misses a lot of things. Yeah, that's just on the house itself, but let's say you make the house, but well, it's on an empty void, for example, it will be floating. It won't have the, let's say, the gardens, the streets around. So mm, from the beginning, whatever you make, it's quite isolated. And a lot of the art, it looks better when it's in conjunction with everything else you have in the environment. That's what we just talked about on the composition. The environmental art is not just the isolated element. You got to consider the whole environment. Everything comes together to make this 3D interactive painting that you have. So that's that's the thing I just remembered because I'm getting to more developed stages on this project. Since I have more stuff going on my map, I've done more work, everything's starting to come together more along more nicely. So far, a lot of the stuff I've done, it looks well, alright. Like I'm not that happy with it. It comes of being an artist. You make stuff, you're not happy, and then you improve it until you're happy with it. But I've been moving on from these things because I gotta do the other parts of the map. But here comes the thing: the more work you put in, the the more layers start to add up, and the whole environment starts to come together. And then, since it's a conjoined effort, everything works alongside each other. Uh, Things start looking better. The thing you previously didn't think was that great, once you make the other things around it, it starts to look better. And now I'm getting to this stage on this project. I've done a lot of the big things. That's why I also said in previous videos that I wanted to prioritize these out of bounds buildings. They are big, they take a lot of the space, covering the boundaries of the map. So I thought, yeah, I'm gonna make these, it will make the map feel more complete. And it's indeed giving this effect now. You'll see it eventually on the next time lapses. But the more things I make, the better everything comes and just looks together. So that's something very motivating. I talked about motivation on the previous project, and it's still hard to keep working on things. But that's what I talked about. That I like how everything comes along together. You see the thing started to get life. So this is where I'm at now. I've 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 been across the whole journey making this map, the assets from the beginning, now the actual level art, and it's now starting to come along together, and that's like what I love about it. And it's starting to make things better. And I can't deny it probably makes me more motivated to work, to keep working, to have a reason to push when I didn't want to work, and that's just something to consider. The beginning might feel hard. There's a lot of things to do, but the more you do, the better it gets. But then comes another paradox. Is something Squidsky, a friend of mine, talked about on, is that the last 2% of a project, your map, is like way more work than 2%. A lot of things just start showing up that you gotta do. And this is, I guess, the final clutter path, the final polish that you gotta do on your level. And when you get to this part is when you see this effect truly take place. When you have your level before a clutter pass, it looks good, all the structures, the shapes are there, but something is missing. And it comes back to this thing I've just talked about. A lot of the art is something that it should not be noticed. If it is there, you don't notice, but it looks good. But if it's not there, if it's not properly done, something is wrong, and you are not truly able to tell exactly what is wrong. This is the part regarding clutter. When you have your level almost done without the clutter, something is missing. All these tiny details that make your map have a life, like feel lived in, feel complete, is missing. So let's say you spend 99% of the time working on everything on the map, and then just the clutter pass is missing. And this is like one of the most important things, the small clutter. Once you do it, your map kind of takes a new direction. Like it changes completely. And it's right at the end. So you could say there's some kind of curve to this effect of, oh, the more work you put in, the more everything comes along together. Yeah, the clutter pass is like the final frontier, you could say. It's when everything is there, but something is missing. The clutter. Then you do the clutter, and oh, the map is done. I didn't realize how good this looked. Usually, hopefully, right? So I'm still not on the clutter pass, but this is something it's always fun to have, is when you're at the final stages of your level and then you just do the clutter and it's an entire new map. Like it looks so much better. This is something that happened to me recently on the Palacio map. We did it for the map car contest. Was recently in game on CS2. Is that we had the contest was separated in a few stages. The first stage we had a gray box, some architectural blockout on the together with the level design, and then there was the second stage. This one was we had more time. We had to develop more of the art of the map, and we did a lot of the art. This things which I'm doing just now on this current map, the architectural stuff, the structures, actually applying the textures to these facades, doing the whole structure, the whole main things, the main assets, all of that. But then we got to the deadline and we delivered the map to the second stage, but it missed a lot of this clutter, a lot of these details, exactly the matter of the clutter pass. And then we spent the time on the refinement stage, I guess that was the name, the third and final stage, to just do this clutter. And it comes back to the commentary Squidsky did, that the last 2% of the map is like way much more work than you think. Well, we took a few, I think, I don't remember now exactly how much time we had for this last final stage, but it was at least a month. We spent a month just working on clutter. This is all small things, but it takes a lot of time. But the map was completely different afterwards because it just makes so much difference, the clutter. And when we're getting there on these time lapses on this map, it's gonna be a joy, at least to me. And maybe you guys will be able to see how much difference it makes. Because, oh yeah, this is something, again, I think I've talked on this series, you always see other people's work, the finished work, the finished product, and it always looks so good, but you do not see the whole process that the person had to go through. And most of the time, until this final 2%, it didn't look that great because again, it's from what I said. Art is something that comes along when everything is there, but when things are missing, when there's still stuff to do, it doesn't look as nicely. It's this incremental thing I'm talking about. So uh, that's one of the reasons I've talked that I'm doing these time lapses. Yeah, I continually feel that these time lapses and these voiceovers are are kind of pointless because it's so much work for me, and it also isn't the most optimized content. Like I could have just made one video after recording all these time lapses with just the most important parts of a script and so on. But then I decided, well, I wanted to show the whole process, just to leave it there, just to to see later eventually. If someone can come here and see, oh, throughout most of the development, things don't look that great. So that's one of the things I hoped with this time lapses thing is to show that until the very end, a lot of the art just doesn't look that great. And I'm seeing this more and more now and you'll see this on the future time lapses. The more stuff you do, the better everything comes along. So I think this rant is over, so we can move on to the next topic. So the next matter is kind of related to this part, which I'm working on just now. I did this backyard kind of courtyard part for this building that I was just working on with the stores, and it's something that is not accessible, but it's still open. It's not like there's just a building facade just blocking the map straight on, like I did on the brown building itself. You have this fence that is the actual thing that blocks playable space, and then you have this garden behind it. And this garden does have a purpose, right? Uh, it makes the whole scene there more open. It feels less claustrophobic. You don't feel as closed in. So this is the thing I wanted to talk about. Again, it's the matter of shapes, the architecture, the composition, and so on. All of this does have impact on how you feel, how the art looks, and so on. So this is something that is quite interesting if you go and study real architecture. Like I don't know if any of you have been to those older European cities, but they feel different than a lot of the modern cities we have nowadays. And it's kind of interesting because it feels like they were made to look good. And then you wonder yourself, were they made like this to look good if they are so old and so on? But then as soon as, let's say, you walk in, let's say, an avenue in Paris, for example, when you look down this avenue and you see this big monument just at the end of the avenue, then you think, oh, yeah, they did make this street specifically to end at this monument. So let's say back then, when they built the cities, they did some environment art, could say. They did plan things not only thinking of function, but they did this specifically aligned avenue to the monument because, well, it looked good. So, well, this is where I wanted to get at. This example shows that there are things that can be done that just look good. There are some things that just tickle or psychological in some ways that uh, you can't really reach if you're just doing things thinking of function. So since environment art is something creative, you don't have the limitations of the real world, is that you should take this freedom to study what actually makes, let's say, cities, buildings, and the whole scenery look good. What what factors make them look good? The the thing being aligned exactly at the street, at the end of the avenue, just as I mentioned, is one thing. The other thing that I always liked and I need to look forward more further into is the courtyard thing. Whenever I went to a courtyard or I saw a courtyard, it just feels so good because it feels cozy when you're in it. It feels comfortable, it feels secure, and there's probably reasons behind it, and they're often used in older architecture. You go, let's say, walk on a street in, again, an older city, you can then enter an arch. After going through this arch, you get to this open courtyard, and it feels good. So, uh, since we don't have the limitations of the real world, we should use the statics. And the courtyard I just did there, with the trees, the cypresses on the brown building, is one example of that. From the gray box stage, this place was accessible by a door and a window from the main house, the stone house, and then these two thin corridors. You can see me working on one of them just now, doing this building, you see, this gray box block out, and then the brown building, which I did recently, the last building I did. These two buildings, they take part on these thin corridors that make access to this courtyard with the cypresses. The effect it makes is similar to the courtyard one and the archway I just explained. You have these open areas, and then you go through this thin corridor, which would be similar to an archway, to get into this new courtyard, this open space. This is a kind of a division of the areas. If you enclosed in around this cypress courtyard, because the things are built around, so it feels enclosed, because you have these thin entrances to it. So this is just one example. Another example, also common to these older European cities, is the consistency and harmony between buildings. In these cities, a lot of the buildings are the same height, they are glued together, they follow a same style, same materials, and they just work as a unit, you could say. They are one single building composed of many buildings. And that is part of what makes things look good. So this is a concept I also applied on this map. Back on the fourth level, our time-lapse, I did the first building on the outer bounds that deviated from this main house that was made from gray stones and these reddish orangish tones of wood. Being the first building that didn't fit this style, I had other references for it. And this is where the first problem came. The main reference that this map is set in is the city of Bariloche in Argentina. This city has these older buildings, like the one I'm doing just now, the ones I did, the main stone building. But most of the city is composed by more modern buildings, more cheaper buildings. So they are often done with flat walls, uninteresting materials, just white paint. So they aren't really that interesting. But sometimes that is the style you're going for in your map, because often enough you can make this style look good. It depends. The problem was that I talked about on that fourth level, our time lapse, is that it was the initial art style that I was gonna do for the building, this other out of bounds building that was gonna deviate from the stone style. It was this modern style I just described. And it didn't match with the stone building, which maybe is something you also want. We talked about contrast. Contrast may be something you want. It depends. However, I thought this through when I was going to make this building, which I said on that video. I changed my mind right at the blockout stage. Why? Because the main stone building I had done, that is the main playable space of the map, you play all around this building and inside this building, is the focus of the map. So the outer bounds buildings, they shouldn't be contrasted with the main thing going on the map. They should just be background buildings. Similar to the affordance thing we talked about. it wouldn't make sense for the outer buildings to be so different or contrasted with the main building, which is the focus of the map. So that was why I changed my mind back at that stage, and I made the building in a style that was more in line with the building I had already done, the stone building. So it ended up being this wooden building with plaster, but also had metal roofs, similar height, similar colors, similar style to the stone building. And from that moment onwards, I had that in mind. I need to make the buildings fit in together. So this is where the concept comes. From that building onwards, I did these other ones which have all this similar style. They have the similar height, similar materials, similar number of floors, and all of that make them go along together. Again, as I said, you can choose to have these effects, or maybe what you want, your vision for the map is to have this contrast. Let's say you have a 5v5 map, which you have two bomb sites. Then it's an idea to have two contrasting parts of the map. One, let's say, more modern part and one older part. So this sort of contrast could help players navigate on the map. However, this is a shorter map and the main focus was the main house. So I wanted all the outer bounds to be this same harmonious single style. So I'm still able to have quite a lot of variety on these buildings. They have, for example, this one has brick walls, but other buildings, they have the wooden walls. But as long as overall they're similar, it works very nice together. Makes this harmony. So to close this topic, I'll sum it up. Basically, there are many tricks, many ways to shape your level that explore these psychological things that are on our mind to, pursue the vision you want on your map. So I cited two, the ones of the courtyards, of the way the street is aligned with the monument, the framing of things, and then also the consistency between buildings. You can use that to maintain a consistent style, to have an harmony, or to have a deliberate contrast on your map. Those are two ideas. But yeah, that's where in the environment art is the fun part. We have the freedom to do and use any of the statics. So use them wisely, search about them. I need to do that as well. So that's it on this matter. Now, one thing that might have caught your attention is that this building I'm working on just now has changed a bit. There was a jump in progress, and that it did happen. You see that there is new window frames, this new roof. I textured the wooden beams on the bottom. Uh, Basically, I lost footage, so you missed me doing that. I had my VRAM ran out, so Hammer crashed, and when I went back and recorded it, the recorder just recorded a stuck screen, like a frozen screen. So there was nothing to really show. It was just the same angle for like 5 hours, something like that. But well, that's about it. If you missed that progress, it was just some work on this building itself. But you saw me doing the main structure, the block out of the building. I saw the proportions and the shapes and all of that looked nice, so I went on to just detail further the building. This is the building that I talked about before, that I do use the trick of having the actual detailed interiors behind the windows, because the windows are considerably big, and it's not on all windows of this building. For example, you have this side, which you do not directly face. Those windows are all opaque, but the main windows that are facing the playable space, they are all detailed behind them. Not much detail, but just some curtains, just a room behind them, repeated rooms, so not much work. However, on the first floor of this building, which I do, I think on the next level or time lapse, I end up making so the interiors are just closed off. You have a roll-up doors, because different from the T-spawn area, which I talked about on the beginning of this episode, which did have less gameplay, this part, this building, this ground floor, would have a lot more gameplay. So both the same time in not having to detail an interior, but also because of visibility, I ended up just closing the interiors on the ground floor. It's just a roll-up door for visibility and all that matters we've discussed. So by this point on the episode, there isn't really much else to be saying. So I'll leave you guys with some music and I see you again at the end results of this time lapse. So here we are at the final result. I'll have to test how the affordance or visibility goes on this window here and the details behind it. Need to play it with some players. This room here ended up being quite dark, so I can probably remove some of the extra detail inside there for performance. And here you have this effect I talked about, like the building kind of aligns with this site you have. Then you go through the thin corridor into the courtyard of this open place. So you're going from open place to open place from these transition spaces that are more cramped. If I didn't have this garden back here with the trees, it would feel definitely way more claustrophobic, as I said before. Then here comes a new problem with this new building. I kinda replaced this roof right here. On the gray box it was a surfable roof, and now it's just a regular roof. By the way it's shaped, you can walk all over it, so I'll probably just end up blocking it, because the original version, the surfable roof, wasn't really that useful or that important to the layout. Now here I test something that changed from the gray box that is important layout wise and gameplay wise. The shape of this roof, this place I am at right now, it wasn't accessible before. So yeah, here I'm looking at the details of the barber shop. I can go right by the window, so that's something that made it more worth it for me to art the interior. Then here's the new angles I'm checking, this new roof. The main concern here is this towards the inner house. This is something I'll have to see later. And here I'm checking how actually noticeable are these interiors I've made on the windows. Here I really like how the building I've just finished fits with the framing of the arch. And then you have the roofs here, which you can see from here. Their silhouettes are really important. You have multiple layers to the roofs, especially on the building on the right. Have like 3 levels of the roof, makes all the silhouettes interesting. But well, that's all for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this far, and have a good day.